Hi everybody, my name is Eric Nadel. I've had the privilege of broadcasting Ranger games for 44 years, and we celebrate the Rangers' 50th anniversary this year with a bunch of guys who played for the Rangers in the 70s and the 80s. And first, let me introduce you to them. To my left is Dick Bosman, who was with the Washington Senators when they moved to Texas and who pitched the very first game for the Rangers in Anaheim and the very first game for the Rangers in Arlington and the very last game for the Washington Senators in Washington before they moved. Toby Harrah, who was a four-time All-Star. Tom Grieve, who of course played for the Rangers and the Senators, became the general manager and now a TV analyst in his last year doing TV analysis. And Jeff Burroughs, who was the MVP in the American League with the Rangers back in 1974. To my right is Ferguson Jenkins, a member of the National Baseball Hall of Fame, 284 wins, including 25 for the Rangers in 1974, when he had 29 complete games, which is more than the entire major leagues had last year. Jim Sundberg, a six-time Gold Glove winner. And Al Oliver, the man with the highest batting average in his career with the Rangers of anybody who has played with the Rangers, batted .319, also holds the Ranger record for home runs in a doubleheader. He hit 4 home runs in a doubleheader one night in Detroit. So gentlemen, thank you all so very much for being here. I probably remember some stuff that you guys did. But let's start at the beginning with you guys who were with the Washington Senators finding out that the team was going to move to Arlington, Texas. What was that like, Dick?
Well, we had a pretty good idea it was going to happen. We had played an exhibition game here, and rumors were flying all over the place in Washington. And yeah, we were in my wife Pam's folks' house getting ready to go to bed, and TV came on after the ball game, and they said, "They're going." And I said to Pam, "We're gone, baby." And you know, for me, you know, I was kind of angry about it. You know, we'd had some good years there, got married there, had business there. Didn't know what to expect coming here. So at the time, it was a shock for one thing that we were really going to go, and it's like the whole ball club got traded. So here we go.
Toby, what'd you think?
I remember when Bob Short, they had him hanging from about the third deck and they had a rope around his neck because the team was moving. They weren't real happy about that. And then that last ball game, when the fans started coming out on the field, I had to take off running to go back into the dugout. Somebody grabbed my hat, and I was afraid they were going to take the rest of my uniform. So I remember running back in the dugout. It was crazy, that last ball game. Wow. But I was excited about coming here to Texas, though. That was a new team, and it was going to be a lot of fun. It was.
And Tom, you were really early in your career. You'd been a first-round draft pick. What were your thoughts about the move?
Well, you know, we didn't have a very good team, and we didn't draw a lot of fans, but I was from New England, so Washington was fairly close. It was easy for friends and family to come to the game, and I anticipated being there, and I loved Washington. I didn't want to leave. I think you're always a little bit afraid of the unknown and come into some place you don't know anything about. So it was unsettling to me. It was unsettling to my wife. We grew up in the same hometown. So I wasn't positive about it when it first came out. Now, as it was the case with most of the players, once we got here, everybody loved it.
Yeah, what was the reception like? Do you remember first arriving here?
I remember the people that were there were really happy that we were here. There just weren't very many of them. Yeah, I think we might have drawn 700,000 the first year and 800,000 the next year. Our dressing room clubhouse was in right center field, and we'd walk out to the clubhouse after the game, and there might be 5 or 10 people right above the clubhouse, you know, saying hi and wishing us well. But it was a football state, still is. Took a while for baseball to catch on.
Now, Jeff, you came later that year, but what were your thoughts when you walked into that stadium, which was clearly a minor league stadium and really windy?
Well, you mean in Washington?
No, here.
Oh, here?
Yeah.
Well, I do remember here we had our first batting practice, and Frank Howard was hitting some balls, and the more balls he hit, the madder he got. And he finally went over to Ted Williams and he goes, "Ted, this place sucks." He goes, "The ball doesn't carry. I don't think I'll hit 10 home runs here." And I say, "Well, you know, you've got to be better than that, Hondo." But that was what he thought, and it was a difficult hitting ballpark unless you were a pull hitter. You know, right down the line, the ball flew pretty good, but that right center area is death to. Because back then, I hit most balls the other way, and we had left-hand hitters like Epstein, I think, with Jim Spencer, and it just killed those guys. They didn't know what to do.
You know, Eric, when we first came here, the team was there's a work stoppage, so the season started late. And for people that are from Arlington, I can remember during that work stoppage practicing at Randall Mill Park on a Little League field. And Jeff mentioned Frank Howard. I can remember throwing batting practice to him, and there was no screen. And I had a trash bucket that was, you know, about this high, trying to throw it like that and get out of the way so Big Hondo didn't hit one right back at us. And back then, we didn't even have baseball uniforms or workout clothes. We were probably dressed something like this, a big league team taking batting practice at Randall Mill Park before the season.
Toby, what do you remember about playing at Arlington Stadium?
For me, of course, playing for Ted Williams, who's bigger than life himself. This guy was one of the greatest hitters that ever lived, if not the greatest hitter that ever lived. And then Nellie Fox. Nellie Fox used to say, "Toby, if you're going to play in the big leagues, you have to get out, you have to learn how to bunt." So he used to take me out early and work on my bunting. And so I'd bunt every once in a while, but even with 2 strikes, I'd bunt. And that was just part of it. But to me, it was playing with these guys, playing with Tag and Jeff and right here, Boz and Fergie and Sonny and Scoop. Nobody hit the ball harder. I've never seen anybody hit the ball harder than Scoop all year long. He hit line drives everywhere. I think he hit 2 opening day one time. Didn't you, Scoop? I think you did.
That does sound right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he could rake. I think so, man. I watched him hit. He could rake. And just to be in the big leagues and put that big league uniform on and to wear the Ranger uniform, I was proud of it. It was great. It was such a thrill. I remember when we first came here, A.T. Lowry was a big car salesman. I think he gave everybody on the team a car to drive. It was awesome. We had a great time. And of course, you know, Ted Williams, my golly, I mean, what can be said about this guy? He always liked, it could be 120 degrees out, he'd have a jacket on. Remember the jacket? I used to tell him I was going to steal his jacket sometime. I think he's a little heavy.
Trying to cover up that boiler.
Yeah, but you know, Ted Williams, he had this real deep voice, and just to be around him, and you know, I was a hitting guy for 14 years later on in my career, and a lot of it had to do with Ted Williams and the things he talked about as far as hitting goes. Stay on that fastball. Stay on that fastball. And it was true. And then I watched Jeff hit all those balls to right center field, and the wind would be blowing in. Oh, he'd get about between first and second. And, oh, yeah, you'd get a little bit upset.
Yeah, still remember that.
It was fun.
Still remember that. Still have nightmares about that, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
The wind just blew straight in from right field. I mean, hard. And like you said, that's what made me a pull hitter. I couldn't hardly hit the ball in the warning track in right field, but down the line, I could hit some home runs.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, you still managed to hit 30 your first year here and 25 your second year here with 118 RBIs to lead the league. How did you adjust to playing in that ballpark?
I never did. I was too stupid. I mean, because you know, back then we didn't have any hitting coaches. We didn't have hitting coach assistants, and we didn't have any tape. We had nothing. We basically had Art Fowler and Jackie Moore just throwing. They say if you do something 1,000,000 times, you'll get it down, and that's almost all we had to do is take 1,000,000 swings to get our swing fixed. But no, I was kind of like Toby, but it ended up hurting me because I wasn't as good as athlete as Toby. But most of my balls I had early in my career were center, and right field, and maybe a curveball or two I might pull the ball. So after a while, that I started to go up there and then really try and pull everything. And you're kind of born with one kind of swing, and you just can't change everything, you know, at once. And I tried to pull it, and I really gave up the outside part of the plate a lot, and it didn't work for me. And I transferred over to Atlanta, and then I was able to go back to my old way of hitting, and it worked out a lot better.
Now, Dick, you had the honor of pitching the first game the Rangers played, and again, it was at the end of a work stoppage, so the first game was played in Anaheim. And what do you remember about that game?
Well, I remember I think we had like 2 days to work out after the strike broke, and we jumped on an airplane and went to Anaheim. Okay, and here we go, and we got a ball game, and I went deep in that one. I pitched 8-something, and Andy Messersmith beat me 1-0. Lindblad came in, and Hal King couldn't flag down one of his fastballs and went to the backstop, and the guy scored. But I was pleased that I was able to get that deep in that ball game.
That game was 1-0. The only run scored on a wild pitch that was thrown by Paul Lindblad, making you the losing
I got the
pitcher
L on that one.
in the game.
Nothing new there, but
The Ranger offense managed 2 hits in that game.
Yeah.
But then when you guys got a chance to play here on April the 21st, you pitched that game too, and that was a special night for you for more than one reason.
well, for more than I didn't really, when the strike was started, we walked out the 31st of March, and me, Lindblad, and Joe Levito jumped in our cars and headed for Texas. Well, that was my wife Pam's due date to have our first child. She doesn't have the child, of course, and the whole strike is 15 days, still nothing happening. Now we start to play, and we get back here, and we're going to play, and she's in labor all day. Doesn't tell me, because she had her priorities in order. I was pitching that day. So I go 7 or whatever it was, and I'm in the clubhouse. The phone rings. It's Short. He says, "Bozzy, you better hurry up. She's ready to go." So I hustle out, and there's a police escort sitting by the cars, lights flashing. So we get a police escort to Harris Hospital, and that little girl's sitting right there.
How about that?
Yeah. So Michelle was born after the game, and that's my grandson Lucas over there. And yeah, it was a pretty special day. We beat them, and she was born after the game. We had a cooler of Coors beer in the car. Walked around there because you couldn't get Coors beer out on the other coast yet then, see? So I walked the floors for, 6-7 hours before she was born. So that's how we kicked that one off.
Do any of you guys remember what that strike was about? What the reason was?
The strike was about the pension plan. And when you go back to that moment in time, it was a very meaningful thing for the players because our salaries back then were, I think the minimum salary might have been $7,500 or $10,000. And we felt that if we worked as a ball player till you were 30 or 35 years old and then tried to get a job somewhere else, you're way behind everybody else. So to make it fair, you deserve a solid pension plan. And it was Marvin Miller, Bozzy can speak to it better than I can, but the players were 100% together on that. Rich Billings and I lived over in Dallas, and the man that ran our apartment complex told us, "You don't have to pay rent until you start playing." And both of us said, "That's good because it's going to be hard for us to pay rent right now." So it was a very meaningful thing for the players. I believe the whole amount of money that was being negotiated that kept us for playing for 2 weeks was somewhere, Bozzy, around $4 million, $4.5 million. So when you compare that to the average salary is over $4 million, it was something that was very meaningful to us. And I would be willing to say that everyone sitting here, every month when they open up an envelope and they see their pension plan, are pretty proud of the day that we stuck to our guns and did that. I know when I get my pension plan, it's more than I made in a year as a player every time I get it. So it was pretty meaningful back then.
Did you guys all have off-season jobs?
Yeah, Toby and I played winter ball almost every year. That was
yeah.
our off-season
American
job.
Movement as well.
I don't know
It was
about
fun.
Jeff.
It was fun.
No, I didn't. I just wanted to kick back. That's just,
I didn't want to have to work. That's why I would play winter ball, man. I didn't want to have to work for a living. Some guys work for 18 hours.
I'm a California guy.
Yeah, right. I played 3 years with the Globetrotters, so that worked.
There we go.
All right.
Now, Sonny, you and Fergie came in 1974. Scoop didn't come till 1978. That 74 season, of course, was a dramatic season. Billy Martin was the manager. The Rangers, who were absolutely horrible in 72 and 73, all of a sudden were in a pennant race. Fergie, did you expect that when the season started? Were you expecting this team to be in a pennant race?
No, not really. I knew that we had some decent players. We made a trade for Alex Johnson. We had Toby was in the infield, Cesar Tovar. We had a bunch of guys, Lenny Randall. To me as a pitcher, I knew the guys could play, but I don't know how many runs they could score. And I had a lot of low-scoring ball games, but hey, I won some games, and I enjoyed it.
And you jumped, Sonny, like from Double-A that year to the major leagues in spring training. Did you make the team in spring training?
Yeah, actually, from what I understand from Billy, I actually made the team in the instructional league the winter before. He had gone down there to look at some players, and he would later convey that I had actually, he was going to slot me as the starting catcher in '74. And in my first game, I mean, I grew up a Cub fan, watching the Cubs play just from a very early age, driving maybe 190 miles through cornfields of Illinois to go watch the Cubs play, and Fergie was one of those guys. And then to catch Fergie in my first major league game, actually against the world champion Oakland A's, and he threw a one-hitter. And so that was, and I was kind of numb. It was hard to feel the baseball, which was kind of scary, because the touch of the baseball is really something a player, especially and pitchers, have a feel for it. And I was just numb that first game. But Fergie threw a
You know what I
incredible
told him?
game.
Just put your glove where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I know how to get it there.
And did you shake him off at all, or did you
Not
throw whatever
really.
he put down?
He threw a lot. He put down his finger a lot of sliders, because I know the Oakland A's couldn't hit sliders, and running fastballs. But Sonny was pretty good. I think after the first or second inning, I said, "We got this game in hand. We're going to take care of them," and we beat them, like 2-0. I think the score was.
Was it
We beat
2-0?
him.
I don't
We beat
remember.
2-0.
I don't remember the final score, but
One
thought it was
Campaneris
1.
got the hit, and you know how he got the hit? Jim Fergosi went to cover first base, threw the ball behind me, so they flashed a hit right away, because they thought I was going to give up hits. But I knew Oakland. I pitched pretty good against Oakland.
Yeah.
Fergie
did.
was I've never seen a pitcher work quicker than Fergie. I mean, the games are like 2 hours, sometimes less. Sometimes, you get ground balls in between innings. You might get one ground ball if you're lucky. You throw it and Fergie's ready to go. And sometimes Fergie wouldn't take his 8 pitches. Sometimes he'd go 3 or 4. I'd say, Fergie, well, how come you don't use all your pitches? Well, 9 innings times 8, that's a lot of extra pitches in a ball game. So Fergie, sometimes he'd throw 3 or 4 and let's go.
We were flying on commercial flights back then. We would just pray that Fergie would pitch the getaway game, and we had a better than average chance of making the flight. Sonny, what was it like playing for Billy Martin as a young guy, as a rookie?
Well, my first gray hair that I have, so many of them today, started back then. Bill Freehand told me going into that season, and Bill had him in Detroit, and he said, he's going to be tough, and you're going to have to get used to it. And so I think that first year is anybody up here will say that we would have done anything for Billy that first year. Everything kind of went well. It was rather smooth, and there was occasional meal on the table that was on the table in the locker room. Occasionally it was on the floor. Occasionally he would wipe off the entire table of food onto the floor. And those of us who were scavengers, we would pick through some of that stuff. But he was tough. Tough, but we played well that first year in '74.
How about you, Fergie? Obviously, he didn't take you out very often. You threw 29 complete games out of 41 starts. But what was it like when he went out to the mound?
Yeah, the odd time he'd give me that, I had a hand, he says, "Are you all right?" I said, "I'm fine." He'd walk back.
If
That
he
was
ever
it.
chewed anybody out, it was
Art
Sonny.
Fowler,
He'd chew
Art
Sonny's
Fowler
ass
would
out
say
all the
sometimes,
Art
"Hey,"
Fowler was great.
he'd say, "Billy's getting ticked. Throw more strikes." So that's what I'm paid to do. But Art Fowler was the funniest guy in the world.
Oh, he was great. He was Billy's buddy. For all those years, he was Billy's pitching coach. And every time Art would go out to the mound, Billy would say, "You go to the mound, we might put a pickoff player or something on." Art would say, "I don't know what you're doing, but Babe Ruth died. You're pissing Billy off. Throw strikes." And you'd turn around and go back. He'd say the same thing every time. He said the same thing.
Yeah.
No strategy.
No
Nothing
strategy.
about
Nothing about how
slow
to
it
get
down
back.
or your arms getting out too quick or
Yeah.
your strike. Nothing nothing about that. It's just that Babe Ruth was dead.
Babe
and
Ruth
throwing
is
strikes.
dead. Those strikes. Babe Ruth is
Now,
dead.
Billy had been an infielder, so what was he like for you, as an infield
He
instructor?
made me a lot better baseball player. He really did. When I play shortstop, usually when a guy steals a base, the infielder would just leave his position and go cover to get the throw. Well, with Sonny, Billy would say to just cut a little bit, go in a little bit, and create a little bit of an angle, and then go over, because he didn't want you giving up that position in case it was a hit and run. The ball would be behind you. And I could get there almost about the same time the base runner was getting there, because Sonny threw that ball right there every time. It was a four-seamer right over the base. It was like I knew it was going to be there. He threw strikes all the time, so he made the game a lot easier. He was great, and Billy was great. One time I went in there and I was sitting there reading the paper, and here comes Billy. And he looks at me, he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just reading and looking at the stats and stuff." And "Don't do that," he says. "You go out there every day and do whatever you can to help your team win. And at the end of the season, the stats will be there. But don't get caught up in stats. This game isn't about stats. It's like a girl in a little bikini. They show a lot, but not everything." So that's how he looked at that. That's right. Stats, man. Stats. It's all about winning. So that was Billy. That was Billy.
Scoop, you came from the Pirates, and at that time there was a real rivalry between the National League and the American League. What were you thinking then about coming to the American League after having been with the Pirates and a winning organization too?
Well, first of all, coming from a winning organization like the Pirates, it was tough for me to leave Pittsburgh after all those years. And I wasn't that familiar with Texas. The only thing you think of is JFK assassination. That was the first thing that I really thought about Texas, because I really hadn't been here. But once I got here and saw the players that we had, I was pleased with the teammates that I had. Richard just came over at the same time. And the thing that I remember, I enjoyed playing here because of the weather. Didn't have to worry about the snow, the cold, and I enjoyed the warm weather. And the thing that always stood out with me about Texas is that when I took left field at 7:35, the clock was in left field, and it said 95 degrees. I said, "Dang!" I said, "Okay, I can deal with this. I can deal with the heat." And that's back when Al's foul started in left field. And the reason why that started because people knew me as a hitter, but they didn't know I could run and throw. And I never forget, Billy Martin didn't know that either, because I remember Mickey Rivers led off with a double. I went down the line, turned, threw him out a second. A couple innings later, Chris Shamus comes up. It's a double. I go over to the line and throws him out. And from that day on, it seemed like every ball that was hit in the left field, I caught. I mean, the fans had me going. I mean, they really did all year long. Personally, I thought I should have won the Gold Glove, but they didn't know I could catch it, and run. But the fans here were extremely great to me. Leaving Pittsburgh was tough. I will admit that. We were winning, and the thing that stood out, I knew I was going to be traded. I didn't know where, because the 10-5 rule was in effect. If I'd have stayed in Pittsburgh the following year, that would have gave me the upper hand. But anyone knew anything about Al Oliver, I would have spent 18 years in Pittsburgh. I had no reason. My wife was from there. Both my kids were born there. Why should I leave Pittsburgh? But once I got here and saw how the fans were, I said, "Hey, I mean, this is all right," because when I was in the minor leagues, I played with Gene Clines. And Gene Clines always said about me, the one thing I always enjoyed was the crowd roaring. That is what really got me going. I love to hear the crowd roaring. Management treated me fine. Brad Corbett found me a nice home here, and everything just worked out fine. And the thing about it, Texas is what I can say. I played in a lot of places, but Texas fans can be the loudest fans of appreciation that I have ever been associated with. That's one thing that I can say. I really didn't want to leave Texas, but sometimes things happen. But the one good thing about it is I left here on a good note. I had 4 of my best years here. And I remember coming over here and they were talking about Jim Sundberg and Johnny Bench. I played against John for a long time. And I said, well, I got to check Jim Sundberg out just to see how good he really is. And in the first couple of games, he was throwing out runners like it was nothing. So I said to myself, I said, you know what? He is as good as John. And in all seriousness, that is true. But sometimes when you are the first, you get the rep, regardless of who comes behind you. But watching Sonny throw guys out, and Sonny would throw you out with ease. He's real smooth. And Sonny could hit too. And the team that we had, this, and the first game that I played in, the first game as a Ranger, I'm facing Ron Guidry. I said, okay, now we got some competition.
That's lefty against lefty, too.
And so,
Yeah.
luckily for me, I got him early. I got a hit the first time up as a Texas Ranger. First time up, I get a single. And that felt good. I got him early because we know what kind of year he had in '78. But this is a great place to play. But above all things, it's a great place to live. And as we speak now, I'm in the process of thinking about coming back to the Metroplex.
All right.
Yeah, I have some realtors working, and they're working hard to bring Scoop back to see his house pals. And so that's how I felt about Texas. It was a great place to play. It was hot, but when you're going good, you don't worry about the heat. It just when you're going bad, you got to find an excuse. Yeah, but it was a great place to play. The people treated me great here.
Sonny, what did you think when the Rangers that year brought in Scoop and Richie Zisk and John Matlack came that year too, if I'm not mistaken? And you guys had almost won in '77. You had made a serious run at the end of '77.
Yeah, it was a great sign. We thought that we were going to have enough to do it. And I will say this about Al. I played with George Brett too. Many think he was probably one of the best hitters, but Al hit the ball, as Toby was saying earlier, Al hit the ball harder, more consistently than anybody that I ever played with. He could hit a ball actually over the second baseman's head that he would jump at, and the right fielder might catch it in the air. He just hit the ball on a line. But with Zisk and Al coming in and Matlack there, after the '77 season, we thought we had a pretty good chance.
There's no wild card back then. We had to win our division. We were in trouble.
Right.
It was, that's.
And Kansas City was always loaded then.
Oh yes. It was fun. It was fun.
I remember '79 was my first year, and you pitched on opening day in Detroit. We had been snowed out, I think, in Cleveland or New York or someplace. You pitched opening day in Detroit, and it was really cold. Yeah. And you pitched a complete game in like 2 hours and 20 minutes. I remember Johnny Grubb hit a home run in the first inning to give you the cushion, and
One run.
Yeah, right, that's it. I got
Go
my
get
run.
it was it.
Get him, Ferg.
As it they wound up scoring 8, I think. I think it was 8-2. But it was my first game, and we were on radio and TV then. So I had worn a sport jacket, and I didn't bring an overcoat. And I was just freezing by the end of the game. And I was so thankful that you got us out of there so fast. And I had to go down on the field after the game to do the interview with you. And that was my first major league broadcast. And you made the whole thing pleasant for me. So I appreciate that. But then in '79, we had a great team. Jim Kern came over and Sparky Lyle, so that we had a better bullpen then. And as I remember, we had a lot of years like that where we had plenty of offense and just not enough pitching. And John Matlack got hurt, I think, and he was, along with you, he was the ace of the staff. But Pat Corrales was the manager then. What was it like playing for Pat? Because it was his first managing job.
His nickname was Indian. He was Mexican-American, and we had been teammates together in Philadelphia. We played together in Chattanooga and part of a season with the Phillies, and he was also in Little Rock. Pat just, to me, he'd give you the ball, and if you got in trouble, he'd talk to you when you're on the bench. Very seldom he wanted to go to the mound. But I just think that a new manager breaking in and understanding what teammates are all about, you know, that's not an easy task, especially for a young man that took over the managing job. But Pat was an understanding individual, and I'm not sure what my record was in '79, but I enjoyed pitching here. You know, like Al said, I remember a doubleheader. Gaylord Perry and I pitched a doubleheader. When the game started, it was 105. When the second game started, it was 101. And I did not change my shirt. Gaylord changed like 4 uniforms. But yeah, yeah. But it was fun. It was fun.
Speaking of managers, Tag, you were here in '77 when we went through the 4 managers in the second half of the season. Eddie Stanky came for the 1 game. What do you remember about that?
Well, I just remember Eddie, you know, everybody knew about Eddie Stanky. I'd read about him. I knew what a fiery guy he was. Seemed like a good move. I think the team won 9-2, 7-2 in Minnesota. And the next thing we knew, we went to the ballpark and he wasn't there. So imagine what would have happened if we lost. But it was a shock. He came from Alabama. He was a college coach. He thought he wanted to manage in the big leagues again. He got here and realized he probably didn't like to travel, wasn't as comfortable with big league players as he was with the college kids. And I'll give him credit for making the decision quickly and not hanging on to a job that he didn't want. He called Eddie Robinson late that night and said, I made a mistake. I'm going back to Alabama. And he did. So I don't think any of us really got to know him very well.
He called me like at 2 o'clock in the morning. I thought I was going to get fined for being out after curfew. No, he goes, hey, Toby, man, I can't. He said he was going home. And so the next morning I went to the ballpark. I said, guys, you won't believe this, but Stanky is gone. Oh, yeah, he's going to be here. No, he never showed up. He took a hike. You know what? He did tell me this, which was interesting. He said to me, you know, Toby, it's not the best ball player that hits. The guy hits the most home runs. He's not the best ball player. I go, no. What about averages? No, the guy hits the highest average. He's not your best player either. He said it's the guy crosses home plate the most. So I knew Jeff was going to hit more home runs than me, and I knew Hargrove was going to hit for a higher average. But I knew I could score more runs than they could. So that was always my goal. I got to score more runs than these guys. But they were hell driving them in. You try to drive in Jeff and Hargrove.
Hey, wait a minute.
I hit 6th a lot behind them. It was hard as hell. Get round third base real hard, and then they'd stop on me. I go, come on, man, keep going. But I love these guys. No, Jeff and Hargrove and all the guys here. To me, playing in the big leagues, that was half the fun. It was your teammates, and then playing against all these great players like Reggie and Brett and Yastrzemski and Boston, all these great players, man. You couldn't wait to get out on the ball field and play against these guys because if you did okay, you knew you weren't that bad yourself. So it was great playing against all these great. I remember one time Fergie, the count was 2-0, and I hit a ball to dead center field off of him. Next time up, he threw the ball right in my head. I had to duck. I said, Fergie. He goes, gotta let you know I'm out here. He didn't hit me in the head. I think he did it on purpose.
Scoop's got a great story.
Oh man.
Scoop's like he's like 6 for 8 off me, and we're back in Wrigley Field, and he swung really hard at a pitch. The next pitch, I went, okay, I'll throw him the sniffer, right there, and Al went, what's that for?
Yeah, Fergie called that the old sniff ball. And he got me good too. And you know, I have to admit, I deserved it. Because, you know, in those days, being knocked down was part of the game.
That was part of the game.
And you know, it didn't bother me. You know, I mean, if he hit me, what the heck? I got up and went to first base. You know, but I always had this intimidating factor about I was going to be the intimidator and not the pitcher. I always thought that way. But I knew with Fergie that day in Chicago, I didn't know when, but I knew he was going to get me eventually. I didn't know when, but he caught me at the right time because I always went into the ball, see? And pitchers always say that I dove into the ball, which I don't agree with. Now, Fergie would disagree with that. But you got to go into the ball. You can't go away from the ball, but you got to take that chance, you know? And that's what made me the hitter that I was. I always went into it. But I enjoyed Fergie for the reason that has been mentioned. He got the ball and threw the ball. I mean, baseball, to me, they make it hard now with all these rules. But if you're a pitcher, get the ball, throw the ball. If you're a hitter, get in the batter's box and swing the bat. Why step out of the batter's box? What are you stepping out of the batter's box for if you can already hit? What is the pitcher walking around the mound for if he can already pitch? They just taking up time. And, of course, that's my philosophy, you know.
It's mine too.
Yeah.
I'm the one who has to fill that time. Yeah.
They'll always get asked all the time, the best pitch in baseball. I said, hey, I don't care what it is, throw a strike.
That's it.
Throw a strike.
Jeff?
Yeah, I just had to bring this up. It's about Toby, and it's something that has never happened since, and I don't think anybody will ever do what he did in this one game. I think I might have some of the specifics wrong, but I think there's a runner on third. I think there was one out, bottom of the ninth inning here at home, and I'm on deck. Toby's up, and he comes back, and I go, Toby, all you just do is hit a fly ball outfield, we win the game. He goes, Jeff, I just can't get ball up in the air anymore. I just can't do it. I'm a ground ball here, and that's about it. But I'm going to try something different. And what are you going to try and do? When that pitcher throws, I swear to God, and you guys might remember this one. When that pitcher throws a curveball or a slider, I'm going to take the bat, and I'm going to hit down on the ball so hard it hits home plate and bounces up about 16 feet high, and the runner can score from third.
Yeah.
I go, oh, BS, you can't do that. It's impossible. 90 miles an hour. I mean, think of the physics of this thing. You got to hit the top of the ball to hit home plate. And I'm sitting there and I think about the third pitch. The guy throws him a slider and nobody knows what he was doing. He got on the top and he went wham like this. And sure enough, he hit it and the ball bounced straight up. And Mike Cesar Tovar came running home with a winning run.
Right.
Do you remember doing that too?
Nobody will ever do that ever again. Ever.
No one will try to do
No,
it.
that's right. Try to do it ever again.
That's bad.
Do you remember that? Toby, you remember that?
The other thing I want to ask you guys about was 77. Frank Lucchese was the manager to start the year and had that incident with Lenny Randle in spring training. Were you guys there? Were you close to that in Orlando, right?
Yeah, I was right next to the batting cage in the group that was hitting, and Frank was just off to the side. Lenny had hit and came around third base, and I wasn't watching when it happened. It didn't last very long, but you could hear it. And, you know, the next thing you knew, Frank was on the ground. It was an ugly incident. And I never, you know, Lenny was a good teammate, and he was a good friend of ours. So I don't know exactly what happened to him to make him do that. But to attack a defenseless older man in the prime of your life just didn't really fit with the Lenny Randle we knew. So I never really understood that.
Right.
I do remember what he did one time though. He was playing for Seattle. Somebody bunted the ball down the third base line. He got down and tried to blow the ball. Foul. It was blowing it.
Yeah, I was on that team.
Oh, you were? Oh my God, I've never seen that before in my life. I thought, what are you doing, Lenny?
Right. Right. Before we go, I wanted to ask Scoop, because when you came here, you had the nickname Scoop. Obviously, you'd played some first base in the past, and I think that's one of the reasons everybody in this league was so surprised that you were such a great left fielder. You come here with the nickname Scoop, they think you're a first baseman, but they didn't realize what a great athlete you were.
Thank you.
I'll turn it into a question if you want.
Everywhere I go, I try to be as humble as I possibly can be, but sometimes it's tough. But I always played first base in the little league, pony league, high school, junior American Legion, in the minor leagues. And then I went to the outfield in '71 in Pittsburgh. I went to center field when they traded Matty and Lou. because they had to put me somewhere because Bob Robertson and I were platooning at first base, and we both were 20 years old. So I went to center field, and I made that adjustment. It was somewhat embarrassing my first year, you know, playing between Stargell and Clemente, who both had guns. I mean, those guys can throw some heat, and my arm looked like a pea shooter compared to theirs. But having those guys on each side really helped me. And in '72, I became a pretty good center fielder. I wasn't the best, but I could hold my own. And you're right, a lot of people to this day really don't know where a scoop really came from. But I had the ability to scoop the balls up out of the dirt. And I took a lot of pride in that. And what's important is you got to have teammates to help give you that name. You know, throw the ball in the dirt, you know what I mean? In the minor leagues, I had some guys that could airmail some balls over there, you know? But it was fun. But, you know, if I don't get another chance to say this today, you know, the guys that are up here, you know, the Rangers have had some kind of history. You know, we've had some characters that come through here. Two, we know for sure, was Mick DeQuick and Doc Ellis. I mean, you're talking about characters. And believe it or not, those guys helped make our team the way it was. You always got to have somebody around that's loose, that keeps the team loose. Mickey Rivers came to me one day. It was in '80. I think it was in '80. I think Mick might have got one more hit than I got, or something like that. And he came up to him and said, "Scoop, look at here, you know, now, who should get the most hits? Do you want to get more hits, or do you want me to get more hits?" Hey. I mean, I've never had another hitter come to me.
Say that?
And yeah, he said that. And I said, Mick, I tell you what, if we both do our thing, we're going to be fine. You know, that's what I told him. We just have to go out and do it. And of course, he got more hits, which was good, you know, for the team. Of course, Doc spent a little short time here. He was a character. He kept the team loose, very loose. But you got to have those kind of players on the team. But I just want to just thank the fans here in the Metroplex and Ranger fans for treating me with a lot of respect, and they did. If it wasn't for that respect that I received here, there's no way that I would have had the 4 years that I had here. Because I think it's important, and I think all of us here that are sitting here want to be respected. If nothing else, we want to be respected. And as long as we are being respected and going out there each and every day giving the best shot, you can go over 4, but if you go over 4, they still appreciate you. It's when you're loafing. It's when you should be booed.
And I think that's a really good note to close this out on. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We want to thank all of you so much for being here. Jeff Burrows, Tom Grieve, Toby Harrah, Dick Bosman, Fergie Jenkins, Jim Sundberg, and Al Oliver. Thank you all for being here. This has been a tremendous pleasure, and hopefully we get a chance to do more of these as we celebrate the Rangers' 50th anniversary season. Thanks so much, everybody.